Okay, this video is a little bit overdue, but it's my first one, so please bear with me. I did want to do a video on my first solo travel, or just my solo travels in general, just because I feel like it's an experience that a lot of women should be privy to, and if I can help in any way, then let's do it. I left Florida. And when I left Florida, I had, I believe, a 6-hour layover in Miami. I grew up in Florida. I grew up in West Palm, and I haven't actually spent a lot of time out in Miami. So I used the opportunity to leave the airport. You can leave the airport. I went by the water. I took the train out there. I ended up going to like a bunch of different parks, a bunch of different restaurants. I went to go to a sushi spot out there. And I actually stopped by this tattoo parlor and I got this tattoo. It's supposed to be a monarch butterfly because it's like a common butterfly out in Florida. I spent the 6 hours out in Miami just like exploring it, and then the second that, I think like about an hour before my next flight, I went back to the airport, and that was that. I got there I got there at like 11 o'clock at night. I like had to go through customs. This was back when like you had to show them everything because of COVID and everything. They kicked me out of the airport right after I did that because nobody was allowed to be there because it was COVID. So I couldn't access the Wi-Fi there. Called my phone service to let them know that I wanted service out in Puerto Rico. But once I got there, I had no service. I texted somebody and they ended up sending me a lift to the address that I was at. Then I took the lift over to my Airbnb and I stayed there for the night. In the event that your cell phone service does not work when you're out there, make sure that you screenshot everything. So screenshot your Airbnb listing, screenshot your travel directions, screenshot your Google Maps, your Apple Maps, whatever the case may be, just so that in case you don't have cell service, you know where you're going. The next morning, I had booked a whole excursion for myself. I went ziplining all of the most popular restaurants out in San Juan. I ended up going on a sailboat ride. The whole beauty of traveling and solo traveling, especially like as a woman, but just like anybody in general, is that you're entirely in charge of your own itinerary. You don't have to compromise for anyone else. You get to do exactly what it is that you get to do. You get to sleep when you want, you get to eat when you want, you get to go do the things that you want to go do. The next morning I had a zipline excursion because I had never been. It was in El Yunque and I went to go get breakfast out there. So I went there and we ended up driving to another hotel to pick up some other people who were also planning on going to the ziplining place, and we all rode out there together. We got there, we put on like our little gear and whatever, and we walked up to the whole course. But they were fantastic. I had an amazing time. I ended up getting stuck halfway too, but it was like super exhilarating because I was the first one to go and I was super scared, and I wouldn't have traded the experience for the world. The people that I ended up ziplining with, they realized that I was alone halfway through because I was asking them to take like videos of me. You guys can definitely do that, or you can bring a tripod along with you. They ended up inviting me out. They were there for their friend's birthday and they ended up inviting me out to their birthday dinner that night. I was like, okay, maybe. And so, you know, we went back, we finished up the excursion, then I went back to my Airbnb. And I had a canoe night that night scheduled where kind of like you get to ride in the canoes and the floor of the canoe is like glass and you get to see through it. We saw slugs and like they gave us free horchata. I ended up becoming like really great friends with the girl behind me. I still follow her on Instagram to this day. Liz, if you see this, you're dope, and I follow you on TikTok too. You better go, girl. We ended up going out to get drinks. We got glow pouches, and we got dinner, and then they walked me over to the second dinner that I ended up going to, the birthday dinner with the original group that I went, and they ended up inviting me back to their Airbnb, which was like the most beautiful Airbnb I'd ever been in my entire life. And they were like all from Dallas, and they were like the first people that I'd ever met from Texas. And I met like the most phenomenal like super mom out of that group there. Like she was super cool, and just the entire group was amazing. And I ended up partying with them like all night, and we had like the most amazing talks, like the most transparent talks. We went skinny dipping. It was the first time I ever went skinny dipping, and it was crazy, it was wild, it was fun. But it was it was also like dangerous, but I did it anyway, and I had an amazing time. Everybody fell asleep. I ended up leaving in the morning before anybody woke up, and I went to downtown San Juan, and I went to this place out there called the Poets Passage, where like these poets, they live in this shop. It's like a poetry slam area, and like there's an area in the back where like people can perform, but the poets like live above it, and one of the poets happened to be there. But the guy who was running the shop, he asked me if like, he showed me her book, and he asked me like, hey, like, she's here, do you want to get it signed? And I was like, yeah, sure. I didn't know that she lived here, and so she ended up coming down. It was like this personalized message, and it was like the most beautiful experience ever. And she actually looked at me as I was leaving, and she was like, hey, are you a model? And I was like, no. And she goes, lucky you. So yeah, that segues to our next video. And then while I was at the Poets Passage, I found this tile. I guess it was like this painted tile, and it said, aquí vive un espíritu libre, which I think translates to here lives a free spirit. And I ended up getting that tattooed right here when I was out in Puerto Rico. And then I think on my last day, I had a sailboat ride, and I had never been on a sailboat before. Boats kind of made me nervous. Everything in this trip, I wanted to do everything that I'd never done before, but I was like a little bit too scared to do. So ziplining, did it. Canoes, did it. Sailboat was next. Literally, as I got this tattooed, I got the notification from Airbnb that my sailboat ride was in like an hour or whatever. And as I'm sitting there getting this tattooed, I get that notification, and I'm sitting there and I'm panicking. I gotta go. And the lady's like, no, 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 no. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I gotta go. Like, I just spent like $75. And she's like, no, 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 no. And I remember just like panicking in this Uber, because I was like, oh my god, like, I just spent everything on this, like, I spent so much money on this, and I'm totally forgot, like, blah, 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 blah. And so I put in the address. I tell the guy, like, I'm running late. He gets on the highway. I don't even think that we were supposed to be on the highway. So now I'm thinking, you know, I'm here by myself, I'm solo traveling, like, this guy, he's kidnapping me. So we're driving, and then we get to the place, and it's not there. There's no pedestrian way for me to ride, like, there's no. And so he looks at me and he was like, where are you trying to go? And I was like, I don't know, like a sailboat. And so he's like, oh, I think it's the other way around. So we get back on the highway. So at this point, I think my phone is on like 10%. We get there, he barely stops the car. I like run out as he stops the car, and I realize like my phone dies as I get out of the car, and I'm looking at all these boats, and I realize I don't know which boat I'm even supposed to be on. So I'm just sitting there like absolutely defeated. Uber driver drove away, and I'm like turning around, walking back, like head down, like $75 in the trash. As I'm leaving, I hear like, over here, and I turn around, and the guy is just on a sailboat like waving at me, and so I just run. I get there, and I'm like, how did you know it was me? And he was like, it just looked like it was you. And I'm sitting there in like the most touristy outfit ever. I'm super grateful regardless. So I hop on the sailboat, whatever. I'm super nervous about boats. I'm super nervous about the ocean. I grew up in Florida, but it's just the fact that they don't know what's in the ocean really does. Like, we got on the sailboat, and we did a sailboat ride at sunset, and we got like the most beautiful pictures. And I have this freaking picture of me with this like taped up, so it just came from getting this tattooed. We ended up on this ride, and I ended up meeting this like chef and her girlfriend from, I believe, New York. They were both from New York and New Jersey. And we ended up having this whole conversation. I ended up going to dinner with them as well. They ended up giving me like some pointers. One of the girls, she was a model, and she was giving me some pointers. And they were just like giving me tips on like where to go in New York if I ever wanted to get a job. So I was like, okay, I learned so much out in Puerto Rico. I learned so much about the culture. I learned so much about the people. It was such a beautiful place and such a beautiful experience. The whole journey was like really significant to me, which is why I ended up getting these 2 tattoos. It was amazing, and it was beautiful, and it wasn't perfect. It never will be. I know that, you know, it might seem perfect through Instagram and things like that, and it definitely wasn't. So I kind of wanted to just like make a YouTube video just to give some insight on what it was like and kind of like tell my story. But for the most part, I can make another video on what it is that I keep to make sure that I'm safe when I solo travel. I've done 2 other solo travels since then, so I'll probably keep you guys updated. And if you guys need any tips or tricks on like what it is that I say or how it is that I take my pictures, I would love to share it. So if you're interested, drop a comment down below. And thank you for watching.